vanishing the communications array at Luna Station picked up nothing but silence. Commander Elena Reeves stood before the display screens, watching the empty data feeds where the U-ESA Meridian should have been reporting. 7 months had passed since the research vessel carried its crew of scientists and their families into the Void Reach territory. Now, like the 9 other human missions before it, the ship had simply ceased to exist. Elena's reflection stared back at her from the darkened screen. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from weeks of sleepless nights spent reviewing transmission logs and flight data. The Meridian had been carrying her sister Maria, along with Maria's husband and their 2 young sons. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, they had vanished without even a distress signal. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Director James Okafor entered, carrying a data tablet that glowed with classified markings. His expression told Elena everything she needed to know before he spoke. They had found something, and it was not good news. The pattern analysis came back, James said quietly, placing the tablet on the console between them. We ran every missing ship through the new tracking algorithms. Elena, they were all taken in the same region, within a 3 light-year radius of Syndicate space. Elena felt her chest tighten. The Syndicate was one of the oldest and most powerful factions in the Galactic Assembly. They controlled trade routes, mining operations, and held seats on every major council. They were supposed to be allies, partners in the grand experiment of interspecies cooperation that humanity had joined 20 years ago. "Show me everything," Elena commanded. The holographic display materialized above the console, showing a 3-dimensional map of known space. Red markers appeared one by one, each representing a lost human vessel. The used Darwin, gone 4 years ago. A colony ship New Horizon, vanished with 800 souls aboard. The exploration vessel Pathfinder. The medical frigate Hippocrates. 9 ships in total, not counting the Meridian. Every single marker clustered near the boundaries of Syndicate territory. "There's more," James continued, pulling up another data set. "We hacked into the Syndicate's shipping manifests. Illegal operation, but necessary. Their cargo haulers have been making regular runs to a station that doesn't appear on any official registry. The timing matches perfectly with our disappearances." Elena's hands gripped the edge of the console until her knuckles turned white. She had suspected something was wrong for months, but seeing the evidence laid out so clearly made her blood run cold. The Syndicate had not just ignored humanity's missing ships. They had taken them. What about the assembly? She asked. "Have we reported this?" James laughed bitterly. "Ambassador Kim presented our findings yesterday. The assembly representatives listened politely, then voted to classify the matter as a navigation hazard. They recommended humanity avoid that sector until better charts could be developed. No investigation, no search operations, nothing." The screen showed the vote count. 43 species in favor of dismissal. Only 5 abstentions. 0 votes supporting humanity's request for action. The message was clear. Human lives did not matter enough to inconvenience powerful members of the assembly. Elena pulled up the crew manifest for the Meridian. Scrolling through faces she knew. Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead xenobiologist who had discovered 3 new forms of microbial life. Engineer Thomas Adebayo, who had revolutionized fusion core efficiency. Her sister Maria, a teacher who had volunteered to educate the children of crew members on long missions. And those children, including her nephews Alex and Daniel, ages 6 and 4. "They took children," Elena whispered. "They took our children, and the assembly doesn't care." James placed a hand on her shoulder. "There's someone you need to meet. He's waiting in conference room 7. High-level clearance. He says it's time we stopped asking permission and started taking action." The man waiting in the conference room wore the uniform of Earth's Strategic Defense Command. though Elena had never seen his face before. He was older, perhaps 60, with gray hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from making difficult decisions. The stars on his collar indicated a rank that technically did not exist in any public military registry. "Commander Reeves," he said, extending his hand. "I'm General Marcus Webb. I run a division that officially doesn't exist. We handle problems that require unofficial solutions." Elena shook his hand, noting the strength in his grip. "What kind of problems?" "The kind where playing by the rules gets our people killed." Webb activated the room's security protocols, sealing them inside a bubble of privacy that not even assembly surveillance could penetrate. For the past 15 years, since humanity first joined the galactic community, we've been preparing for the possibility that our new friends might not have our best interests at heart. He pulled up files that made Elena's breath catch. Weapon systems she had never seen. Ship designs that pushed the boundaries of physics. Training programs for soldiers who could operate in zero gravity, high radiation, and hostile alien environments. All of it hidden, developed in secret, waiting for the day it might be needed. "We knew this day would come," Webb continued. "Every species in the assembly went through a testing phase when they first joined. The powerful push against the newcomers, seeing how far they can be pushed before they break. Most species accept their place in the hierarchy. They learn to bow, to sacrifice their people when necessary, to be grateful for whatever scraps of protection the strong deign to offer them." "But not us," Elena said, understanding dawning. "Not us," Webb confirmed. "Humanity didn't claw its way to the top of Earth's food chain by accepting the role of prey. We're not going to start now." He opened a new file labeled Operation Ironclad, a screen filled with tactical plans, ship deployments, and target analyses. Elena saw the hidden syndicate station marked in red, along with supply routes, defensive installations, and projected enemy response patterns. "We've been watching them for 3 years," Webb explained. "We know where they took our people. We know what they're doing with them. Slave labor in illegal mining operations, medical experiments, some sold to other species as curiosities. The Assembly knows about all of it. They permit it because the syndicate has power, and power means you can break the rules." Elena felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. "How many survivors?" "We estimate between 2,000 and 3,000 humans are being held across 7 different facilities. The Meridian crew was processed through the main station 2 weeks ago. Your sister and her family are alive, Elena, but we need to move fast. What do you need from me?" Webb smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "President Torres is addressing the Security Council in 1 hour. She's going to present the evidence one final time and give the Assembly a chance to do the right thing. When they refuse, and they will refuse, she's going to authorize military action. I need someone who knows these ships, who understands what we're fighting for. I need someone who won't hesitate when the time comes to pull the trigger." Elena looked at the tactical displays, at the carefully planned assault that would mark humanity's first military action against another spacefaring species. It would change everything. Humanity would no longer be the eager newcomers, grateful for acceptance. They would be a force that demanded respect, that protected its own no matter the cost. "When do we leave?" she asked. 6 hours. "Get your affairs in order, Commander. We're about to teach the galaxy a lesson they won't forget." President Sarah Torres stood before the Galactic Assembly, humanity's evidence displayed for all to see. Ship manifests, tracking data, intercepted communications, video footage recovered from syndicate databases showing human prisoners being processed like cargo. The proof was undeniable, overwhelming, damning. The syndicate representative, a towering being named Vexter, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like embers, dismissed it all with a gesture. "Unfortunate business dealings," rogue elements. The syndicate cannot be held responsible for every independent contractor operating near our space. They're using your stations, Torres countered. Your ships. Your security forces guard the facilities where our people are held prisoner. Allegations without proof, Baxter replied smoothly. The Assembly has already ruled on this matter. Humanity should focus on improving its navigation and stop making accusations against respected members. Torres looked around the chamber at the assembled species. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked bored. None looked willing to challenge the syndicate's version of events. She had expected this, but it still stung to see how little human lives mattered to these so-called allies. Asterisk. Very well, Torres said calmly. Then I invoke Article 12 of the Assembly Charter, the right of self-defense and protection of sovereign citizens. As of this moment, Earth considers the syndicate's actions an act of war. We will retrieve our people, by force if necessary, and we will hold accountable everyone involved in their capture and imprisonment. The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Vexthera's eyes blazed brighter. You dare threaten the syndicate? You are barely 20 years in space. We have fleets that number in the thousands. You have no idea what you're starting. Torres smiled, and it made several nearby representatives shift nervously. General Webb, execute Operation Ironclad. Across human space, hidden shipyards activated. Vessels emerged from asteroid bases and gas giant facilities where they had been constructed in absolute secrecy. Humanity had learned from watching the assembly. They had studied every conflict, every military engagement, every tactical doctrine employed by the galactic powers. And they had built something better. The first wave consisted of 50 ships, each one equipped with weapons and defenses the assembly had never seen. They moved through space with a speed and precision that defied conventional physics, using drives based on principles humanity had discovered independently and never shared with their galactic neighbors. Commander Elena Reeves sat in the command, chair of the strike ship Retribution, watching the tactical displays as her fleet approached the primary syndicate station. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, veterans all, trained for this exact mission. Target in range, her weapons officer reported. All systems green. Elena thought of her sister, of her nephews, of the thousands of humans, held prisoner by beings who thought they could treat people as property without consequence. All ships weapons-free? Show them what happens when you take our family. The Retribution opened fire, and the galaxy learned a new truth. Humanity had come to space seeking friendship, but they had brought the capacity for war. And when you threatened their loved ones, they would burn your world to ash and call it justice. Asterisk, the reckoning the syndicate station designated Outpost Epsilon 7 had stood for 200 years, a monument to the power and reach of one of the galaxy's oldest factions. It had survived pirate raids, territorial disputes, and even a brief skirmish with a neighboring empire. In all that time, its shields had never been breached by hostile fire. They fell in 14 seconds. Commander Elena Reeves watched through the Retribution's view screens as the station's defensive grid collapsed under the focused assault of human weaponry. Magnetic accelerator cannons fired solid projectiles at velocities that turned simple metal into devastating force. Energy weapons carved through armor plating that had been considered state-of-the-art by galactic standards. The station's defenders scrambled to respond, but they were fighting an enemy that moved and struck unlike anything in their tactical databases. Breach teams ready, Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported from the tactical station. We have confirmed locations for 3 holding facilities within the station. Estimated 1,200 human prisoners across all 3 sites. Elena's jaw tightened. 1,200 people who had been stolen, processed, and imprisoned by beings who saw them as nothing more than resources to exploit. She thought of Maria, of Alex and Daniel, and hoped they were among the survivors about to be liberated. "Deploy all teams," Elena ordered. "Rules of engagement are clear. Anyone who surrenders will be taken prisoner. Anyone who resists will be eliminated. Anyone who harms a hostage dies on sight, no exceptions." The assault ships launched from the yaw. Retribution's hangar bay, streaking toward the crippled station like arrows seeking their target. Each ship carried a team of soldiers wearing powered armor that made them faster, stronger, and deadlier than any conventional infantry force in known space. Humanity had learned well from centuries of warfare on Earth. They had simply upgraded their lessons for the stars. The first breach team hit the station's outer hull with controlled explosives, carving an entry point through reinforced metal. Syndicate security forces waited on the other side, weapons raised, confident in their superior numbers and defensive position. That confidence lasted exactly as long as it took for the first human soldier to step through the breach. The firefight was brief and brutal. Syndicate weapons fired plasma bolts that humans had studied and learned to counter. Human weapons fired kinetic rounds and focused energy beams that punched through Syndicate armor like it was paper. Within minutes, the security teams were either dead or fleeing deeper into the station, abandoning their posts in panic. "Facility 1 secured," the team leader reported. "We have eyes on the prisoners. Sir, you need to see this." The video feed appeared on Elena's screen, and she felt bile rise in her throat. The holding facility was nothing more than a series of cages, cramped metal boxes barely large enough for a person to stand. Humans huddled inside, many showing signs of malnutrition and abuse. Some wore the uniforms of various Earth vessels. Others wore civilian clothes that had long since become tattered rags. Children clung to their parents, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Get them out," Elena commanded, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "Get them all out now." As the rescue operations continued, Elena pulled up the tactical overview of the larger battle. The human fleet had engaged Syndicate forces across 7 systems simultaneously, hitting every facility where intelligence suggested human prisoners were held. Reports flooded in from each strike force. Enemy ships disabled or destroyed, stations captured or neutralized, and most importantly, humans found alive. The Syndicate response was chaos. They had not prepared for an enemy that could strike with such precision and overwhelming force. Their fleets scrambled to respond, but human ships were faster, better coordinated, and fought with a ferocity born from righteous anger. Every human vessel carried crews who knew exactly what they were fighting for. They had seen the evidence. They knew what the Syndicate had done, and they would not stop until every last human was free. On the bridge of the Retribution, Elena received a priority communication from General Webb. His face appeared on her screen, and she could see the command center behind him, filled with analysts and officers, coordinating the massive operation. "Commander, we've cracked the Syndicate's central database," Webb said. "You need to see what we found?" The files appeared on her screen, thousands of documents detailing operations that spanned decades. The Syndicate had not just taken humans. They had been preying on smaller, weaker species for over a century. The evidence showed coordinated kidnapping operations, illegal experimentation, slave trading, and worse. All of it sanctioned at the highest levels of Syndicate leadership. All of it ignored or actively covered up by the Galactic Assembly. "How many species?" Elena asked quietly. "At least 30 that we can confirm. Millions of beings taken over the years." The Assembly knew, Elena. They all knew. This wasn't a few rogue operators. This was systematic exploitation, and the powerful species looked the other way because it didn't affect them. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. This was not just about human prisoners anymore. This was about a galactic order built on the suffering of those too weak to fight back. An order that humanity had unknowingly joined, that they had tried to respect and work within. An order that was fundamentally broken. "What are your orders, General?" Webb's expression hardened. "We finish what we started. Every facility gets hit. Every prisoner gets freed. And then we make sure this never happens again to anyone." The liberation of the syndicate facilities took 18 hours. When it was over, humanity had recovered over 2,000 of their own people and freed nearly 15,000 individuals from other species. The rescued prisoners told stories that would haunt Elena for the rest of her life. Stories of families torn apart, of experiments conducted without consent, of beings treated as property rather than people. Asterisk among the rescued was Maria Reeves and her sons. Elena watched through tears as the medical teams brought them aboard, alive but changed by their ordeal. Young Alex held his mother's hand with a grip that spoke of nightmares still fresh. Daniel would not speak at all, just stared with eyes that had seen too much for a 4-year-old child. The syndicate leadership demanded an immediate ceasefire and called for the assembly to condemn humanity's actions. Ambassador Kim stood before the assembly once more, but this time she was not asking for help. She was delivering a message. "We presented you with evidence of crimes against humanity," Kim said, her voice carrying across the chamber with steel in every word. "You dismissed us. You told us to accept our losses. You protected the predators and abandoned the prey. So we did what we had to do. We protected our own." "Will we?" Kim asked calmly. She activated the holographic display, showing the recovered database files. "Because we have evidence here of 30 species who were victimized just like humanity. We have proof of assembly officials who took bribes to look the other way. We have communications showing that senior members knew exactly what was happening and chose to do nothing. Shall we make all of this public? Shall we let every species in the galaxy know how their leaders allowed this to continue for over a century?" The chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other with expressions ranging from shock to guilt to barely concealed fear. The power structure they had relied on for generations was cracking, and they could all feel it. "Humanity is done playing by rules that only protect the strong," Kim continued. "We propose a new accord. Real protections for all species. Real consequences for those who prey on the weak. And real justice for crimes that the Assembly has ignored for too long. Any species that wants our support in reforming this broken system is welcome to join us. Any species that wants to maintain the old ways should know this. We will not allow it. Not anymore. Not ever again." President Torres addressed Earth that evening. Her speech broadcast across all human colonies and transmitted to every corner of known space. She spoke of the rescued prisoners, of the evidence discovered, of the choice humanity now faced. They could return to being junior members of a corrupt system, or they could forge a new path. "Today, we showed the galaxy that humanity will not accept injustice," Torres said. "We will not bow to power that is built on the suffering of innocence. We came to the stars seeking friendship and cooperation. We still want those things, but we will have them on terms that protect everyone, not just the strong. To the species who have suffered in silence, wondering if anyone would ever stand up for you, we say this: you are not alone anymore. Humanity stands with you, and together we will build something better." The response was swift and surprising. Within days, 17 species announced their withdrawal from the syndicate trade networks. 12 more requested meetings with human diplomatic teams to discuss mutual defense agreements. The smaller species, the ones who had been victims for so long, began to speak up. They shared their stories. They demanded investigations. They refused to be silent any longer. The syndicate fractured under the pressure. Internal divisions that had been suppressed for generations burst into the open. Some factions wanted war with humanity. Others wanted reform. Many simply wanted to save themselves from prosecution. Within a month, the syndicate as a unified power ceased to exist, splintering into dozens of smaller groups scrambling to distance themselves from past crimes. The Galactic Assembly itself faced a crisis of legitimacy. Species demanded answers. How could such widespread abuse have been allowed? Who else had been covering up crimes? What other secrets were being hidden? The old guard tried to maintain control, but the foundation of their authority had been shattered by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Commander Elena. Reeves stood with her sister Maria on the observation deck of the Retribution as the ship prepared to return to Earth. Below them, the planet turned in serene silence, the same world that had given birth to humanity millions of years ago, the same world that had taught them to survive, to adapt, to fight when necessary. What happens now? Maria asked quietly. She looked older than she had before the meridian disappeared, her face carrying lines of stress and trauma that might never fully fade. Now we make sure it never happens again, Elena replied. We build a fleet strong enough that no one dares to test us. We establish protection for species who can't protect themselves. We show the galaxy that there's a better way to do things. And if they don't want to change? Alana's reflection stared back at her from the viewport, and she saw the same determination that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Then they'll learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the oldest or the wisest. But we're the ones who will stand up for what's right, even if it means standing alone. Maria took her sister's hand, squeezing gently. We're not alone, though. Not anymore. She was right. The messages were still coming in, species after species reaching out to humanity. Some wanted protection. Some wanted justice. Some simply wanted someone to believe them when they said they deserved better. And humanity, the young species that had only been in space for 20 years, was becoming something unexpected. Not conquerors, not overlords, but protectors, champions of those who had no voice. The species that said enough was enough and meant it. The galaxy had trembled when humanity showed its strength. Now it would learn what humanity did with that strength. Not to dominate, but to defend. Not to exploit, but to uplift. Not to rule, but to ensure that everyone, regardless of size or power, had the right to live free from fear. General Webb appeared on the communication screen, his expression serious but satisfied. Commander Reeves, President Torres has approved Phase 2 of the operation. We're establishing defense networks around vulnerable species territories, building bases where we can respond quickly to threats. We need experienced officers to lead these efforts. Interested? Elena looked at her sister, at the nephews who would grow up in a galaxy humanity was reshaping. At the stars beyond it held so much possibility and danger. She thought of the thousands of beings still out there, still suffering, still waiting for someone to care enough to help them. Yes, sir, Elena said firmly. Let's get to work. As the Retribution began its journey home, carrying rescued prisoners and evidence that would reshape galactic politics for generations, a new era dawned. The era of humanity ascendant. Not through conquest, but through conviction. Not through cruelty, but through courage. The 9th and 7th missions had disappeared, and Earth had said enough. The galaxy had trembled and would never be the same again. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, predators looked over their shoulders and wondered if they would be next to face humanity's justice. They would not have to wonder long. Asterisk.